everyone, welcome to the US individual taxation classes. In this class, we'll be doing practice of certain questions on the taxpayer filing status. So let's dive into to practice some questions. Welcome back to the audit class. So, sorry, my bad. So welcome back to the taxation class. This is individual taxation for the US enroll agent, right? So in the last class, so far, if you see, we have studied the complete overview of the US taxation, which we have discussed in very first class. And then after, from the last class onward, we have started getting into more detail about one by one the respective topic. So in the last class, we have covered residential status. In that, we have covered use of prior year return, identification of resident and non-resident alien, right, that we have discussed in detail. And then after we discuss about like taxpayer filing status, which include like all 5 category of filing status. It's a single status, married filing jointly status, married filing separately, head of the household, and a qualified widower with the dependent child. So we covered all these things in our last class. So today there are few things which we left over in this taxpayer filing status. We'll be covering that first, and then we'll jump on to the sources of all income, and then we'll be discussing more in detail about applicable adjustment to the gross income. So these two topics we are trying to cover in today's class. But before jumping into the new topic, let's finish off some small topics which were left over from the taxpayer filing status in the last class. Right, so let me present my screen and we can go from there. Can you all see my screen? Yeah, hope you all can see my screen. Yeah, so if you see, this is chapter 1. We have covered residential status, which we have touched base just now, both like use of prior year return and the residence and non-residence alien details. Then we discuss, oh yeah, this is like updated one. So I'll send you the notes with this updated one. The things which we have updated over here is this 1/3 and 1/6, which was not there earlier, right? So this is a new update. So I'll send you this updated note. Then we covered this practice question in last class. And then after we discuss on taxpayer filing status, we covered all 5 category of taxpayer filing status, right? You want me to quickly run through again, or you have an idea now for all the 5 category of filing status? Yes, no? Why so silent?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So yes, ma'am. Yes, Shubham. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but could you please send these files, sir?
Yes, I'll send you today.
Thank you.
I'll send on the group. So yesterday, actually, I have not updated this diagram, so I have not sent it. But today morning, I have done the update, so I'll send you this file.
Sure, thank you, sir.
Right. And now, after this, we covered this married filing jointly, their responsibility, and then liability, relief from those liability. Those all things which we have covered, all the 3 category of relief: innocent spouse relief, separation of liability, and equitable relief. Then we discuss on what is injured spouse, and then understatement of tax and statute of limitation and the filing status. Then lastly, in yesterday class, we covered signing of tax return, right? So who all can sign the tax return and how the tax return can be signed, and especially for the signing of joint return. Then after, yeah, so one small line I have added over here from the last class is amendment in the filing status. So if you are, for example, if you want to change your filing status, for example, you have already filed a return for, let's say, financial year 2021. And right after 3 months, let's say, for any reason, you want to change the status. For example, like earlier, you might have filed married filing jointly status return. But now, unfortunately, the terms of the spouse are not good.
right? And you see like there might be a challenge in future for taking up the loan or something which you need any financial assistance in future, either for any property or for any business, right? So then you can think of changing the status, and that change in the status of the previous year would be considered as an amendment in the tax return, and that need to be filed by 1040X, right? Make sense? So all the amendment returns need to be filed in the form number 1040X, and any change in the filing status is also being considered as an amendment in the filing income tax return. Make sense? Yep. Yes, no? Okay. No response or not interested in responding? Either ways, okay, no problem. I'm used to it. So, in addition to yesterday, we covered these two practice questions. So, I have added one more practical question to practice, especially like people get confused what all things we need to cover, or how we need to calculate the half of the cost of keeping the home, which is being required eligibility for head of the household status, right? Do you remember head of the household status? What all things you need to be doing to get like the status of head of the household? So these are 4 requirements for to be eligible for the head of household status filing, because head of the household status filing have certain advantage, right? So first one was the person should be unmarried or considered to be unmarried on the last day of the year. Second is paid more than half of the expense per household. So yesterday I know some of you are confused how to calculate this half expense for the household, right? So today like we'll be discussing an example to calculate how this need to be worked out, right? Second is taxpayer home was main home and for more than half a year. So that is very simple, like more than 6 months, you will be living in that home for which you are maintaining and for which you are claiming the expenditure, right? And then last is qualified person living with you, that is your dependent children or dependent parents. Dependent children must be living with you for more than half a year, but for the parents, it's not mandatory that they should live with you, right? So you can claim head of the household status. When you can claim head of the household status, when you have dependent children or dependent parents, and that dependent children would be living with you more than half a year, but the dependent parents are not required to be live with you for any time. But second important condition is you will be paying more than 50% of the expenditure of the household in which you and your dependent children is living. And you, for if you are claiming on account of parents, then you are paying more than 50% of their normal expenditure, right? So what are those 50% of expenditure? Let's go through an mathematical example. So first one, if you see the column B, which is amount paid by taxpayer. So let's see, there are 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, the total cost of the household expense, scenario 1, and scenario 2 is again the total cost of household expense. Whereas as a taxpayer, you have paid this much amount from the total expenditure. Let's say there is a rental expenditure in which you and your children is living, right? And you have paid $1,000 rent for the same, right? Second is property tax, that is $100, and you have paid $100 for that. Third is interest on mortgage. So expenditure is $200, but let's say your grandparents or your parents are paying interest on mortgage and you are not paying it, right? The next is utility expenses, like that is for gas, electricity, water supplies, right? So let's say $100 is a monthly expenditure for your utility and your parents are paying, or maybe your grandparents are paying for it. You are not paying for it. Then there are certain repair and maintenance expense for the household, right? So there might be some plumbing work, some electrician work. We end up paying, total expenditure was $50. And you have paid $20, and rest of the $30 might be paid by your children or your parents or your ex-spouse or someone like that, right? And then property insurance expense. Let's say $150 is the total property insurance expense, and you have paid $80 out of it, right? And the rest of the $70 is paid by someone other than you, right? And then your grocery bill. So let's say for your food, milk, or like other grocery stuff, the total expenditure for the month is $600 and you have paid $400 out of it. That means the total expenses were $2,200 and out of that you have paid 1,600. So 1,600 divided by 2,200, how much it's come? Can you do the math for me? Can any of you do the math for me? What is?
So please repeat.
I'm saying total expenses paid by the taxpayer, that is 1,600, divided by total expenses of the household, 2,200. How much percentage does it come?
72.72%.
Say that again.
72.72%.
Yeah, 72.72%. That means more than half of the cost of keeping the home is paid by you as a taxpayer. So you can claim head of the household status, right? If you see the scenario 2, the rental expenditure is 1,800 proper, and out of which you have paid 1,000. Property tax is $100 and you have paid $100. Interest on mortgage is $500, but you have not paid anything. Utility expense is $100, you have not paid anything. Repair and maintenance expense is $150, you paid just $20. And property insurance is $350 and you have paid $80. And grocery bill is $800 and you have paid $400. So total expenditure is 3,800, out of which you have paid 1,600. So how much percentage of the expenditure you have paid? 1,600 divided by 3,800. How much is the percentage?
42.1.
42.10. That is less than 50%. So if you are paying less than 50%, then you cannot claim the status of head of household. Right? Make sense?
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
is there some percentage criteria that we have to cross that much 50% of criteria, then will be considered as head of household if you are paying?
Yeah, it's been mentioned here that half of the cost of keeping the home
Okay,
eligible for head of the household status. So if you are paying more than 50%, then only you will be considered as a head of the household. Right? Yeah. Shubham, Divya,
Yes, sir.
Garima. Good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we have discussed, what all to be included in the cost of keeping the house. But more important for us also to know what should not be included, right? Any cost of upkeeping expenses are not part of keeping the household expenditure, right? What are the upkeeping expenses? Like your clothing, your education, your medical treatment, your vacations, your life insurance, your transportation, your car, right, are not included in the calculation of keeping the home expense, right? So cost of upkeeping
Kamalji,
is
excuse me, your sound is flickering.
How about others? Can you all hear me comfortably?
Yes.
Yes,
No.
sir.
So Vivekji, I think you have some internet issue.
Okay.
Yeah, just check your internet. Or maybe change your place. Right? So another question is head of the household test. Right? So we have seen like these are the 4 conditions. What are the 4 conditions you need to meet to be the head of the household? First one is unmarried and considered to be unmarried. Second is paid more than half of the expense for the household. and third is taxpayer whom was mean whom, and the fourth is qualified person dependent, either a children or a parent, right? So now another practice thing is how to identify the qualifying person. So first one is qualifying child. If a person is a taxpayer, so qualifying child such as son, daughter, or grandchild who lived with the taxpayer more than half of the year and meet certain other criteria, right? That is considered as a qualified child. It does not include the child of any girlfriend or boyfriend. Like in US, most of the time, what is important over here for you, consider yourself as a resident of United States of America, then probably you can easily, or you will feel more comfortable in digesting those concepts. So in there, like living partners are very much common, whether it's a girlfriend or boyfriend, and it's no age bar as well for those kind of relationships. And the people are very comfortable living together or in the living relationships, right? So, but for the tax purposes, if your girlfriend have any child or if your boyfriend have any child, that child will not be considered as a qualified child for the purpose of head of the household status, right? It should be your biological son, biological daughter, or maybe biological grandchild, right? So second important thing is that qualified child, he or she is single. If he or she is single, then you are a qualifying person, whether or not taxpayer can claim the exemption for the person or not, right? If he or she is married, and the taxpayer can claim an exemption for him or her, then that person is a qualifying person. Third is if he or she is married and taxpayer cannot claim an exemption for him or her, then that person is a not qualifying person for the calculation of for the filing of the head of the household status. It means to say, if I summarize everything in a very layman language, if your child, whether it's your son or your daughter or your grandchild, right, then you can consider them a qualified child. But up to what age, up to what extent, till the time they are dependent on you. If they are married or if they are independent, then you should not be considering them as a qualifying child for consideration of the status of head of the household, right? And second thing you need to keep in mind, any child of the girlfriend or any child of the boyfriend would not be considered as a qualifying child to help you make your status as a head of the household, right? So these two things you need to keep in mind. Second thing is qualifying relative, who are your parents. So taxpayer can claim an exemption for him and her if they are dependent on you, right? Taxpayer cannot claim an exemption for him or her if they are not dependent on you. If your parents are already earning good, right, and they are not dependent on you, they are not taking money from you, then you should not be consider them as a dependent on you, right? Just for the taking the benefit of head of the household. Next is qualifying relative other than taxpayer's parents, such as grandparents, brother, sister who meet certain tests. If he or she lived with the taxpayer for more than half of the year, and he or she is related to the taxpayer in one of the way listed under the relative definition, who do not have to live with the taxpayer later, and taxpayer can claim an exemption for him and her, then that person would be considered as a qualifying dependent. Second is if he or she did not live with the taxpayer for more than half of the year, then you cannot consider them as a qualifying person. Third is if he or she do not related to the taxpayer in one or the more ways listed under the relative definition, who do not have to live with the taxpayer later and is the taxpayer's qualified relative only because he or she lived with you all year as a member of the taxpayer household, then that person is not qualified. I'll give you example one by one, don't worry. Taxpayer who cannot claim an exemption for him or her is not a qualified person. So one by one. First one is they are saying if there is any relative who is being dependent on you, whether it's your brother, it's your sister, and who meets certain other criteria to be your relative, right? In that case of scenario, if that person is dependent on you and living in your house and you are paying for more than 50% for them and they are living in your house for more than half of the year, then you can consider that person is dependent on you and you can take the benefit of head of the household filing status. First thing. Second point is if he or she did not live with the taxpayer, if he or she, that means the brother, sister, or you can say grandparent, or like maybe any other relatives fall under the relative definition, do not live with you for more than half of the year, then that person would not be considered as a dependent on you. Then that person is not a qualified person for helping you to build your filing status as a head of the household, right? Third is if he or she is not a related taxpayer in one or more way listed in the relative. So if he or she is not your direct related, right? If he or she is not your, biological brother, biological sister, or biological, you can say grandparent, right? If for example it's like your brother is your step brother, right, and he's living with you, then that you cannot claim for him to be the dependent on you. So first of all, the person should meet the definition of the relative, right? Second, the person should be dependent on you, right? And you are paying more than 50% of the expenditure for the household, and he or she is living with you for more than half of the year. Then only that person would be considered as a qualifying person to help you claiming the status of head of the household. Other than that, you cannot claim the head of household status if the person is not your relative, right? And the person has not lived with you for more than 6 months and you have not incurred for more than half of the expenditure for maintaining the house. So if those three conditions do not meet, then you should not be considering your status as a head of the household, right? Any doubt?
Sir,
Hmm.
so that person should be the direct relative, right?
Yes.
Okay, not like step brother, step sister, or stepmother.
No,
Okay.
no. Anyone else have any question? Yeah, Shubham, Rajat, Garima.
I have a question. Suppose uh, if someone marries a girl there,
Mm-hmm.
the second marriage probably,
Mm-hmm.
and the girl has a son or a daughter.
First
Okay,
girl or second girl?
so the second one,
Hmm.
right? And she has a child,
Hmm.
so it will be a stepchild for,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So will that person, that child, qualify as a qualifying person?
No. Rather, you should go for married filing jointly. So you can get better benefit from married filing jointly than head of the household.
Okay.
For head of the
And
household, it should be your biological children or parents who are dependent on you.
if
Got
that
it.
the spouse is not allowing for the status for the married filing jointly, and she wants to separate their accounts, so
Hmm.
for them, for in that case, they'll go for the head of household.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so I think Rajat, sorry, I said it wrong. So,
Will be able to do it then.
sorry, I said it wrong. But if they both got married, and like the girl have a child, right? And they
Hmm.
wanted to have like separate accounts. They wants to file it separately, and the men is paying 50%, more than 50% of the like household expenditure, and the child is living with them for more than 6 months, then he can claim head of the household. Yes.
Okay.
Only for
Yeah,
the
that
girlfriend
was my
and
question.
boyfriend child is not allowed. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Shubham, good.
So that
Yeah,
means
my
that they are claiming the status of like the stepdaughter is paying basically.
yes.
So just you said that it will not be like the direct relative should be there.
Yeah, but now they got married, so now like stepchild is a direct child, like it's your baby now, you know,
Okay.
or the client's baby, not your, but client's baby. Right? Cool. So these were like few topics I thought to do some additional study on that or do some practical example on that to finish off like first two topics.